All right, back to this video. Let's see. Maybe his case is about to get much better and stronger.
Oh yeah.
The first minute and a half is just, dude. I don't recall ever seeing you before. I forget faces and so on. So I may have seen something by this guy in the past. First minute and a half, total hypocrite and total deceiver.
Yep.
Not a good combination. It's a good combination for Dawa. It'll help you in Dawa, but doesn't help you with us. Let's see.
By the same logic, if someone discovers that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam led his companions in battle, they shouldn't jump to the conclusion that he was a warlord.
That's not why people call him a warlord.
Most people who make this claim, they don't take the time to understand what exactly a warlord even is.
We literally just put 3 dictionary definitions and the Wikipedia entry on the screen.
And Mo fit them all.
Yeah, and we can see there's sort of a general sense in which you could apply to lots of people, and then, you know, but it in common usage, it can be used as in a very negative sense or an insult. Point is, regardless of what sense you're taking it in, do you want someone whose life is war, who builds his life around war? Do you want that as the example that you all follow for how you're supposed to live? That's kind of the key. So the idea is, not even if you have, and even if you have in the Bible all sorts of people waging war, if someone is actually just a person who spends his life fighting, you want him as the supreme example that you're supposed to imitate in your religion. And by the way, it's interesting, Robert. You even see this in the Bible when David wants to build a temple, and God's, you don't build a temple. You're a man of war. You're a man of war. Your son will do that. And it's like, even there, it's like, I don't want you need to draw. Yes, you fought your battles and stuff. That was important, but got to keep in mind the war you keep over here. Your religion's over here, right?
And if you don't make that distinction, then you are going to get a religion of war, which is what this guy's got, and he's just not being honest about it.
Yeah. Try to be honest for once in your life, man.
Not in their religion.
So let's take an example of an actual warlord and compare him to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to see whether or not he was a warlord. Let's take Joseph Kony, a Christian, self-proclaimed.
Oh, so he's got to choose a black guy as a warlord, huh?
And a Christian, of course.
Huh. Isn't that interesting? His example of a non-warlord, Winston Churchill, whitest white guy on the planet. And then who's his example of a warlord?
And then it's deja vu all over again, because 20 years ago, every Islamic apologist would mention Joseph Kony whenever you talked about jihad. Yeah. And they would say, oh, but they're Christians who are violent also. Look at the Lord's Resistance Army and Joseph Kony. And nobody ever talks about him now because he's hiding in Sudan. He's got less than 100 followers. He's a completely insignificant movement with no connection to actual Christian theology. And yet this guy drags out this 20-year-old example because he doesn't have any other Christian warlords. And he's got to get a Christian.
Yeah, that's so he wanted a Christian, but as Robert pointed out, serious differences with this. This guy's more like this guy was more like a cult, like a war cult and so on, duped his followers and so on. But notice the differences, Robert. When a group, like let's say ISIS forms, didn't we see Muslims coming from around the world to join this fighting? Like they all understand, finally someone's doing it. Finally someone's doing what we're supposed to be doing. Like they all had the exact same idea. Am I remembering this correctly?
Muslims from all over the world, David, from over 100 countries, went to Iraq and Syria to join ISIS because they believed it was the real new caliphate.
So, hey, we're sitting here in the UK and France and Germany, but these guys say, hey, we're going to fight and kill and slaughter. That's what we're supposed to be doing, so we're going to go join those guys, right? That's what happened there. Robert, are you familiar with this guy saying, we're going to go around, we're going to kill, we got the Lord's Resistance Army, we're going to kill. Are you aware of Christians from around the world going, finally, we're getting back to the basics of Christianity, going on a killing spree. Let's go join this guy. I don't recall that. At
No,
all.
not a one. In the first place, it's also worth noting that this guy was funded by jihadis, by Muslim groups in Sudan. He was fighting what was essentially a political, not a religious struggle. He tried to rally his get troops, get followers from among Christians in Uganda and Sudan because he thought that they could use them to ally with his jihadi financiers in order to aid the political groups that they both supported. He was not ever trying to establish some kind of a Christian society or something like that. And he never had more than 3,000 followers, which is minuscule, even if you count him as an authentic Christian, which is very questionable given his beliefs. There are 2 billion Christians in the world, and so 3,000 of them doing something is quite different from tens of thousands, actually quite many more than that, joining ISIS and joining other jihad groups around the world, and the Islamic State and Al-Qaeda and all the others appealing to peaceful Muslims on the basis of saying, we represent authentic Islam because we are carrying out the commands to wage jihad that the rest of the Ummah is ignoring.
And the serious difference here, apart from the ones we've already pointed out, if something actually springs from the religion, if an idea comes from the religion, then wherever that religion goes, you should see it. Even if things change culturally and so on, you should start seeing it pop up in other places, right? In other words, the other thing that people used to throw in our faces, too, you had in America, it's Westboro Baptist Church, and they're not going around killing people. They're just going around. They were like protesting soldiers' funerals and stuff, saying God hates gays and all this stuff. So they're going around and whenever we say, hey, look at all this jihad, look at this terror, the response was, oh, but look at Westboro Baptist Church. So you see all religions have their extremists. Okay, so that. And the other example, besides this guy, as you pointed out, they've been using this guy for a while, was the IRA in Ireland, right? You had that sort of fighting. Notice, do you see something like the IRA emerging wherever Christianity goes?
Nope. There were particular circumstances there. Here again, like with Coney, it was a political conflict that used religion to try to gain recruits and widen the appeal of the different factions. But it was not at base a religious conflict. It was that the Irish were fighting as to whether Northern Ireland would remain part of the UK or become part of the Republic of Ireland. That was it. And that fell out across Protestant Catholic lines. So a lot of times the two sides would talk about each other in those terms. But it was not really at heart a religious struggle. It was a political one, just like Coney's.
And Westboro Baptist Church, Robert, if their ideas sprang right out of the Bible, is that something we see everywhere? Christians start going and protesting soldiers' funerals, and this just idea, it's somewhere like Romans chapter 45, thou shalt protesteth the soldier's funeral. Is these ideas coming out of the Bible? If so, we should see them springing up wherever the Bible goes.
It's absolutely true. It's a very important point. And yet we don't see it anywhere else. Westboro Baptist Church is entirely unique. I've never heard of any other group in history, and I've never seen any other group in my life that it calls itself Christian and goes around taunting and mocking and scorning people who are suffering or people who are sinners or whatever. This is not the Christian spirit, and every church, every denomination, every sect rejects that point of view. It's a vastly different situation with Islamic jihad.
Yeah, so the difference between that and jihad is you look at what a group like Boko Haram concludes they're supposed to do in Nigeria, and it seems to be very similar to what like Hamas concludes in Gaza and seems to be very similar as far as your interactions, how you deal with problems and how you deal with unbelievers and so on, causing problems for you by not agreeing with you and so on. And it seems to be very similar to what the Taliban thinks way out in Afghanistan. It's like completely different parts of the world and completely different eras of history. And people keep getting the same idea of how they're supposed to interact with non-Muslims.
It's amazing.
Where's it? And then even people in the United States and Canada and the UK and France and Germany, when there's the call to, hey, we got a jihad going down, they rush down there. What? That means in their own countries, they were getting the same idea of what they're supposed to be doing. And, oh, this is where they're doing it. Let's go down there and join. Very strange that everyone, but let me put it this way. If Christianity actually calls for violence in somehow, and we're not aware of it, you would expect the similar movement to keep emerging wherever Christians go. And yet it's Islam, which is peaceful and tolerant, according to our Muslim friend here. And somehow all these guys keep getting the same wrong idea about how they're supposed to interact with non-Muslims. It's weird. They keep misunderstanding Islam in the exact same way. Wild stuff. All right, let's let him finish his straw man here.
Prophet who led a militia called the Lord's Resistance Army, the LRA, in Uganda just a couple of decades ago. Joseph Kony was a warlord because he lived in a time when there was a general collapse of law and order. He took advantage of this lawlessness to form a militia.
What is this? He put something on the screen that says, warlords don't have political legitimacy, but the Prophet had political legitimacy. This is stupid for multiple reasons.
You could just as easily turn his argument around against him and say that Muhammad moved to Medina at a time when there was a collapse of political legitimacy, and he took advantage of the vacuum and was a warlord. I mean, obviously that's exactly what did happen. That the people in Yathrib couldn't agree on a ruler, and they were threatened by the Meccans, so they thought, let's get this guy who's at odds with the Meccans to be the ruler of Medina, and that will give us a leg up against them. And so it was precisely a military move, a move for with war in mind.
Mm-hmm. And then you'd have to ask, suppose you grant what this guy says, suppose you grant, oh, Muhammad had political legitimacy in Medina because the tribes that were warring wanted a warlord.
Yes.
So the Arab tribes of Medina wanted a warlord who could unite them against the outsiders, and they got Muhammad, and so they did that. And so let's suppose you say, aha, therefore he had political legitimacy. It's a fake requirement to have to not have political legitimacy. You're making that up. But suppose we go ahead and grant that. He had political legitimacy where? In Medina? What's that got to do with him robbing the Meccan caravans?
Well, he has to make a living.
Yeah, for warlord's got to make a living using warlord kind of ways.
Yep.
So
notice, though, that he didn't say, okay, now we're in Medina, open a store, start a farm. He said, raid the caravans of the Quraysh. Mm-hmm. He, in other words, he acted exactly like a warlord and told them, you're going to make your living by robbing the caravans of our enemies.
Yeah, matter of fact, he said the most warlord, I'm talking about in the full-fledged negative connotation of warlord. Muhammad said what? My livelihood is under the shade of my spear. And that, I have to say, is the most warlord-like quote of all time.
Joseph Kony could have had it engraved over his mantelpiece.
My livelihood is under the shade of my spear. I make my living through what? Violence. That's a war. That's the bad meaning of warlord. And it's exactly what Muhammad said. All right, let's let this guy continue with his straw man here.
Loyal followers, and he incited them to rebel against the government of Uganda, and he incited them by making them angry and there was a desire for vengeance. He led them in rebellions in Uganda and South Sudan and elsewhere. And that's the first mark of a warlord. He doesn't have political legitimacy.
He does for his group, right?
Coney, yeah. He's the head of the Lord's Resistance Army.
I'm saying a warlord in any sense. You've got your group regards you as a legitimate,
just like Medina.
Yeah. Boy,
Mecca didn't accept him. He didn't have political legitimacy for Mecca, so he must be a warlord.
This is
by this guy's own definition.
Mm-hmm.
Warlord incites his followers through anger and a desire for revenge against a legitimate government.
A warlord incites violence?
Through anger.
Through anger and vengeance?
Muhammad never did that.
I mean, what's crazy is... So when Muhammad leaves Mecca and starts attacking the Meccan caravans, he just views this as an acceptable way to make money. You rob caravans. Yeah. He's a caravan robber. It's amazing because when Muslims try to defend this, they say, oh, it's because they mistreated him. Well, what would that mean? It would mean he's doing it for revenge, right? Hey, you did this to me, therefore I'm going to attack your caravans. So that would be revenge, and he just said that's what a warlord does.
Yep.
But he doesn't mention that Muhammad did exactly what he just said warlords do. I don't know what to do here, Robert. This guy's saying all these things are definitions of warlords, and it's exactly what we read about in the life of Muhammad. But he's pretending that it's not there in the life of Muhammad.
I got a little Quran for you here, too.
Really?
43:41. And if we take you away, we will surely take revenge on them. And you say, oh, but that's Allah. That's Allah taking revenge. That's not the Muslims taking revenge. But how does Allah take revenge? And then you go to 9:14 and 15. Fight them, and Allah will punish them by your hands. And he will lay them low and give you victory over them. And he will heal the hearts of the people who are believers. And he will remove the anger of their hearts. So the Muslims are attacking people in anger for revenge, to enact the revenge of Allah. And that's how Allah removes the anger from their hearts if they fight unbelievers.
I wonder if he's going to talk about that. Let's see. Good luck, everyone.
He leads an uprising, an angry uprising. He rebels. The Prophet Muhammad.
He leads an angry uprising. Has this guy read Muhammad in Mecca? I mean, they tried to negotiate with him. Please just stop insulting our gods. We'll give you anything you want. Just stop insulting our gods and so on. And he said, I'll make a deal with you. I'll give you a saying. And if you recite this saying with me, then the Arabs are going to rule, and we're going to rule over everyone else. Mm-hmm. And they said, what? Anything. And he said, La ilaha illallah. So in other words, join my group. That's the initiation into my group.
Right.
And what was he saying? Hey, join me and we'll go out and fight. They refused. They refused to convert to Islam and join his group. What happens? He walks around the Kaaba one day and walks up and says, I bring you slaughter. And so, hey guys, my numbers are increasing. It's about to get violent around here. And never forget everyone. Because people say, oh, the persecution, the horrible. Muhammad and his followers lived in Mecca for 12 years. And got out with their lives. I'm saying this because our friend here is obviously going to be complaining about the horrible treatment of Muslims that Muhammad endured. What a wonderful man. What a wonderful man. Endured all this horrible, horrible treatment from these evil, evil people. Robert, Muhammad and his followers lived for 12 years in Mecca.
Yep.
preaching against the religious beliefs of the people of Mecca. Robert, if I went to Mecca today and I spent 12 years preaching against the religious beliefs of the people of Mecca, do you think I'd make it those 12 years?
Nope, I don't think it'd last 10 minutes.
That's weird. So can we say that if we're going to call the pagans of Mecca violent, that the people who control Mecca today would be significantly more violent because anything this guy wants to complain about, the people who run it now are significantly worse?
Islamic tradition says Muhammad went out to a hill outside Mecca, called all the Meccans together, and his uncle Abu Lahab said, "Why are you calling us together? Perish your hands." And Muhammad said, "Perish the hands of Abu Lahab, and may he perish. His wealth and gains will not exempt him. He will be plunged into the flaming fire, and his wife, the wood carrier, will have upon her neck a rope of palm fiber." That's Surah 112 of the Quran. 111, excuse me. And so the point is, he's acting out of anger and cursing his uncle. And this is how his stance toward the Meccans for 12 years. A stance of anger, a stance of hatred, and contempt for them and their beliefs. And cursing this guy to hell. What does he expect? How does he expect they're going to react? And yet, if you went and did that, and said, "Perish the hands of Muhammad and his followers," or something like that, standing in Mecca, you'd be immediately killed. Whereas Muhammad was able to do this freely for 12 years, and it's part of Islamic scripture.
It's weird because this guy's making Muhammad sound like the most peaceful guy who's ever walked the planet.
Yeah, Karen Armstrong must have gotten to him.